Hello everyone and welcome back to the St. Michael Podcast Season 2, Episode 17. Our topic today is Mrs. Kemp. Today we are here with the 7th grade. How are you doing today, Mrs. Kemp?
I'm doing really good, thank you.
How did you decide to get into teaching?
Oh, how did I decide? Well, I originally was not planning on being a teacher. I was a graphic designer for IU's medical illustration. I did that for 6 years. During those 6 years, fell in love with Mr. Kemp, and we decided to have a child. And I became a mom. Well, I've always been into art and drawing with art and doing all that stuff. That when I had my second child, and it was time for them to go to school, I started watching the art teacher here, got to know her. She needed a sub, became a substitute teacher, and started thinking that maybe this is something I would like to do. Well, the art teacher, Miss Richwine at the time, decided not to come back, and they offered me the job. So I fell into it. I loved it because my girls were here and I could keep an eye on them, but it then became something more. And I've always wanted more children, and I couldn't have any more. So all of you guys started becoming the kids I was missing in my life. So yeah, that's how I became an art teacher. Weird way.
What were you doing before you came to St. Michael's?
Back to that. I am originally from South Bend, Indiana. That's where I grew up. I came down here to become a graphic designer. I got a scholarship to the art school here, John Heron. Once I graduated there, I did what we call an internship at the VA hospital with graphic designs, and then I got a job that fell into my lap at IU's medical illustration, which I loved. But then I got married and had a child, and they started to, in the graphic world, it's really hard because people started thinking that they could do their own stuff. So they downsized and I lost my job. So I became a stay-at-home mom. And then got them started at St. Michael's, and I think I explained I kind of fell into this art teaching job.
How long have you been teaching at St. Michael's?
14 years. 14 wonderful years.
Do all the students who attend St. Michael take art class?
All of them. From kindergarten up to 8th grade, they take art.
What is your background in art?
I went to John Heron School of Art. I got a scholarship there. I also had a scholarship at Georgia, but my mother got sick, so I chose the Heron. But yeah, that's how I got into Indianapolis and teaching. I guess back to teaching. I wasn't planning on it. I was a graphic designer, and I hate to say, once you leave, if anybody ever wants to be a graphic designer, the only bad thing about being a graphic designer is once you step away from it, it's very hard to go back. You have to go back and take more classes because technology is ever changing. The programs that I learned from are not the same as here. Though the theory behind it, the typography, the spatial, color are still there, the programs are 10 times harder for someone like me to jump back into it. So, but I can see things still.
Who is your favorite artist and why?
Who's my favorite artist and why? Holy smokes. I like a lot of artists. Right now, I think Grace Kemp is my favorite artist. My daughter. She's at the School of Art in Chicago and wants to be an animator. And I do not do animation, so it's really cool to see that. I go back to Renoir, I think I'm pronouncing it. I like Picasso, but I don't like what Picasso stands for because he was a womanizer. But I like his theory and how he changed with Cubism and all the different periods he had. It showed growth, and I love that. So I don't know that question. I like a lot of artists. But I love the Grace Kemp one.
What are your favorite mediums to work with and why?
Okay. I'm really a watercolor person. That's what I first started out with liking, was watercolor. And right now, though, I'm getting into gouache. I'm trying to teach myself gouache, which is like a watercolor, but it's a lot different. And but I like using watercolors a lot. I do some acrylics, but
What does a typical day in art class look like?
a typical day in art class, well, it depends on the class. I come in the morning. I try to set up some things. If we're doing watercolor, I make sure the water is ready and we get the brushes out and everything. It just depends. I'm an art teacher that doesn't like to have everybody doing the same thing, which does not make it easy for me because we don't have great passing time. One class is on top of another, and that makes it hard, and we don't have an hour. We have 35 to 45 minutes. So it's hard to get some projects done. But yeah, it just depends on the day and what classes I have that day. But it's a long day. And I do get lazy sometimes. I don't wash off the tables after you guys leave, as you can tell right now. But yeah. Next question.
What are some of the projects the students get to do?
Ooh, what are some of the projects? I love, like in the summertime, I start searching because, again, I'm not one who likes to redo projects. I do bring back some of them because I think, like the eyeball, the color wheel eyeball, I love that project. Though I didn't do it this year, and I'm regretting it because I do believe that teaches you color theory and blending with what is it called? Not crayons. It's pastels. Yes, thank you. I couldn't think. Oil pastels. I think that's a great tool for kids to learn from because crayons are nice, but they don't blend. They're not as oily, hence the name oil pastels. It's easier to use. Messy though, but I like to teach the kids how to use that. I like to teach them how to use watercolor. I try to do a lot of things here. The only thing that I'm not teaching here, mostly because we don't have the room, I have a small classroom, is building three-dimensional projects. It's hard. It's easy if it's a small class. I think this year your class did one out of a Pringles can. A couple of years ago, I used to have kids bring in trash, like an old cereal box and all this other stuff, and we would paper mache. It was a hard, and back then I didn't have a room. I borrowed a room, so it was hard to get it to dry, places for it to dry, and things like that. So we can't do a lot of clays or things like there yet. I'm trying to do some studies on different things, but I try to hit a lot of stuff. Ink, watercolor, markers. I'm not great with markers, though. I think that is a technique that you need good markers, and we only use Corolla, and sometimes the coloring isn't very well. Okay. We also use oh gosh, what do we use? We use oil pastels, crayons, markers, colored pencils, Sharpies, yeah, paint, what? Watercolor, definitely watercolors. So, yeah. Does that answer that? What's another one?
What is your favorite project to do with students?
What is my favorite project to do with students? It really depends on the year. Each class is different, so I try to pick projects that you'll learn from or that you'll enjoy, because it's no fun to do art if you don't like it. You all know that. So right now we're doing an animal collage that I'm really excited about, that I've done with a couple classes that I'm going to skip next year, but then next year I know what classes to do. When I introduce a new project, I like to try one in a younger class, one in the older class, to see what I like it from. But yeah, right now the animal collage is my favorite.
Does the art team get involved in school productions, such as fall and spring musicals?
So things have changed in that, but a long time ago we used to do a play, and we'd go over to the green field, and I had an art club, and they would design the whole background and everything. This year, or since we stopped going over there a couple years ago, I have not had an art club. This year we kind of brought it back. Mrs. Una had a little presentation, and we developed it. And I like to have that because I think that helps the student step out of the classroom. So yes, I really like that. I wish we would come back. I'm thinking about bringing an art club after school, but I'm not sure yet how I'll handle that.
What advice would you give somebody who wants to improve their art skills?
Oh, what advice? I try. That's the whole point of doing a sketchbook. I make the middle school have a sketchbook, and I give them quarterlies. I try to explain to the students and to any upcoming artist, it's doing it. Looking and learning from, not just from me, but there's so much for you guys to look at. I didn't have when I was younger. This computer, going out on YouTube and looking for, like that's what I'm doing right now with gouache. I'm looking to see how to use this palette because I've never done gouache. You guys can do that. My biggest thing is you can't just expect to draw. You have to put the time and the effort into it. And it is studying. It's like it's one of the hardest, art is one of the hardest subjects because there's no real answer.
Make sure to check out the links in the description to check out some of the students' art. And that is going to wrap it up. So thank you guys so much for listening to the St. Michael's podcast. God bless.